happen at the state level and also at the county. Counties back in the month of June, they update the new recertification and also the year of the, we used to call 4-year recertification, now it's about 25 and 30 years. We're going to talk about this important information. My colleague here, Alberto, is going to go through the entire presentation. At the end, if you have any questions, more than happy to answer all the questions. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Alberto.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alberto Viciendo. I'm the structural chief engineer in the city. And okay, Moses already went over the introduction, so I'm going to go right to the changes. There were changes in the state law that, as you see, May 26, 2022. And the state law didn't have the state didn't have like a recertification program like we do. We have been doing this since 1975, and due to the collapse of the Surfside building, they created this new law. These inspections for buildings that are 3 stories and taller, condominium buildings mainly, are going to have to be inspected every 25 years, and every 25 years anniversary and 10 years thereafter. And the other buildings will be in a 30-year cycle, so a 30-year anniversary, and then every 10 years thereafter.
So, excuse me, so what we have here, again, they used to call this 40-year certification. It's not 40 years anymore. So it's actually 25 and 30. And so the condominium and buildings that are 3-story or taller, they have to be recertified every 3 years. And the condominium that are located in coastal or near coastal area. So, good.
Okay, so like we were saying, we have been doing the recertifications in 1975 at the 40-year anniversary of the building and 10 years thereafter. So what Miami-Dade County did was that based on the state law, we have adopted the state law within our recertification program. So the recertification program that will comply with the state law. So this is basically that the building recertification consists in structural and electrical inspections, and this need to be done by an engineer or architect.
So with the recertification, is 2 different inspections involved. One with the structural, one with the electrical. And it has to be prepared by a professional engineer or architect.
Okay, this is an introduction to the changes. And as we mentioned before, now there are buildings, the one condominium buildings specifically, and cooperative buildings that will need to be inspected in our city at 25 years anniversary and 10 years thereafter. And all the buildings are in the 30-year cycle, so a 30-year anniversary and 10 years thereafter. It's basically a knowledge of what the recertification is. Again, consists in the structural and electrical inspections, And these are minimum inspection procedure guidelines that it's a template. The report that the engineer creates a report based on a template that has been produced by Miami-Dade County, by the Board of Rules and Appeals. And thus, the engineers, they don't have an option to follow their own settings. They have to follow these templates to submit the reports.
So that report, the format, the report is available on Miami Beach Building Department website.
And the purpose of the inspections is determining the structural condition of the building and also the conditions of the electrical systems. And the reports need to be performed. The inspections or report performed by engineer or architect with registration in Florida. This is something new in the law, or that the ordinance, the Miami-Dade ordinance, that the owner would be receiving advance notification of the recertification. There are going to be three notices. 1 2 years prior, the next one 1 year prior, and then the official one would be 90 days prior. So to the recertification deadline.
So the difference is before we used to send only for 40 years certification and a notice for 90 days prior to the certification was due. But now basically it's going to be in 3 notices. The first notice would be 2 years before the certification due, and the second one will be 1 year, and the third one, final notice, will be 90 days.
Timeline for completion. So you get a notice that your building is due for recertification, and you have 90 days to submit the inspection report. If the engineer or architect that is hired by you or the owner, it's able to recertify the building, then the process is basically completed. But what happens is many times these reports that we received are not, the engineer is not able to do the recertification, and because there are deficiencies. And when there are deficiencies, you have another 60 days, so 150 days from date of notice. You have another 60 days to hire a contractor that the contractor needs to obtain permits to do the repairs.
So the process that follows, first the owner needs to hire a professional engineer architect, and within the 90 days. Now, if they require repair, so they get additional 60 days, a total of 160 days, which is they need to hire a contractor and to correct the deficiency was noted and observed by the architect or engineer.
Okay, there's one more line here that that when the building cannot be recertified because there are deficiencies and there's a permit obtained and the building is going through repairs, then every 180 days, the engineer needs to submit an updated letter, basically stating that the building remains safe to occupy. So this is something new. So let's say the construction takes 2 years, because some of these buildings take a while to get repaired. So every 180 days, we need to get an updated letter from the engineer saying that the building remains safe to occupy. And the last line is that we have to receive updated reports once the repairs are completed, the permits are completed, the engineer must revisit the building and do a final report and address in the report that all the repairs that he has noted before have been completed, and then provide us a letter that the building now can be recertified for continued use under the present occupancy. This is extension time. This is just in case the 90 days that we previously talked went by and you have not been able to submit the report for any reason. We need to get a letter from the engineers. Sometimes there's one engineer or architect doing both, but sometimes a different professionals doing structural and electrical. We need to get a letter from them to be able to give you a 60-day extension.
Well, it's also important in that letter that it states that the building stays to be occupied for that during that time, because it's important when the certification is due to make sure the engineer or architect are involved and has to be requested by them.
Going back, okay, after acquiring a repair permit. So a repair permit, like any other permit, needs to be active and needs to, there has to be progress, construction, whatever the permit is for, and otherwise the permit expires.
Correct. So it's very important that your contractor to call in for inspection at least 180 days in order that permit to be active and live. So that permit is related to recertification. So once for every 180 days, you got to make sure that the contractor calls for inspection, and also the inspection needs to be passed and approved. So that means there's progress, and also provide a letter from engineer to request for inspection for extension.
And stating that the building can continue to be occupied while the repairs are ongoing. The 25-year cycle. These applies to buildings, condominium buildings or cooperative buildings that are 3-story or taller. And this slide talks about the buildings that are in the transition period, the big buildings that were not, in the previous law, were not required to be recertified until 40 years, but now, since the law changed, they're gonna have to caught up to the new cycle, the 25-year cycle. So these buildings between 1983 and 1997 will have to be recertified by December 31st, 2024. And the city has already sent early notifications for these buildings. Similar to the other buildings, the ones that are not three-story and taller and not condominiums, those buildings between 1983 and 1992, they need to cut off to the new 30-year cycle, and by December 31st, 2024. So that day is a key day for all the buildings that are in the transition between the previous law and the new law. This is a new requirement in the law for threshold buildings. And threshold buildings are high rises, but they don't need to be high rises. 3 stories or 50 feet in height. And also there are other type of buildings like churches or auditoriums that also qualify as threshold buildings.
So those buildings that are more than 5,000 square feet and also greater than 500 occupancy load, would be considered as threshold building. So if there are 3 stories or higher, say 50 feet high, or 5,000 square feet area, or more than 5,000, or they have 500 more occupancy load.
Okay, these buildings, the report cannot be by an architect. The structural report has to be by a structural engineer that is specializing in structural design, and he has done similar design in similar buildings that the ones they are certifying. They need to provide proof of that together with when they submit the report.
So the difference is here is before, for example, architects, they could certify this type of building. Not anymore. With this new law requirement, it has to be only a structure that they already designed and this type of building.
And for the electrical part, the same requirement. It has to be an electrical engineer specializing in the design of the electrical systems. This is a summary of the new things, of the changes from the previous template used to produce the reports, the structural reports. These are additions of the new templates that were adopted in June of this year. So basically now there's the engineer has to provide more information about the foundation and going over the list, verify there's no overloading or change of use, occupancy. This is up in the roof, parapet walls, special structures, chimneys. So basically the template that is used to produce the report has been expanded to cover more areas and more specific components of the building. Like doors before were not in the report, there were only windows. Now doors and in the threshold buildings that were defined before, the bigger buildings, there has to be more information about the facade, the glazing systems, and these are basically the changes that engineers need to get used to the new template.
Right, I'm Sharon. I was taking that and then Sharon. And then now plug it again. Right there.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that for everyone to keep in mind with the changes is if a building received a notification, not this year, the pre-notice that came for the 2024 cycle. If a building got their recertification package last year and is in process, you can still use the old form. We are accepting both because it may be that the engineer is working off of the old form. If somebody comes in with a new form, it's more correct, it's better information. No one will turn it down for having the new form. But if it comes in with the old form, we will accept it. But we are looking towards moving to everything that was posted this year. Everyone that got their notice for this year, got their 90-day notice, received the new forms because the new forms were out early in January. So everyone that was noticed this year got the new forms noticed to them. Anyone who was noticed in the past was given the old form. Our website no longer has the old forms. We are looking towards using new forms only, but there's a transition period, and we will work with anyone who's using the old forms in case that comes up as a question. And then now I'll let them continue with the electrical requirements update.
Okay, the electrical requirements, changes from that started in January, like Anna mentioned. There's an infrared thermographic inspection now required, photo documentation. That's also all the reports in the structural tube. And there's a note here, like before I mentioned, that the engineer is not allowed to use any other format than the one provided by the county. Duty to report. This is for the engineer, but the owner has to be aware that the engineer cannot hide anything from us, and the building official. So the engineer has to report to us any deficiency that he finds during the inspection, and for things that are in dangerous conditions, he needs to do it within 24 hours. All the deficiencies, it can be done in 10 days, unless he's aware that the owner is taken care of by applying for a permit or similar condition. But dangerous conditions have to be reported to us immediately by the engineer that finds those in the field. Authorized to me.
Okay, basically, you can send your recertification report, actually upload it, and in the CS system, they need to have account, and then you can upload the recertification report. And also, if you have any question or any concern, you can contact us at the building recertification at mainbeachfl.gov. This is the email just for recertification. So any type of question that you have concern with certification, you can send us to that email.
Okay, one more point. Documents that are uploaded or received through email, they need to be digitally signed by the engineer or architect. They cannot be scans or copies of documents that were signed and sealed by hand.
Basically, there's documentation like any type of construction, like plan documentation, and it has to be signed and sealed digitally, and also it has to be through one of the trusted agencies listed in the City of Miami Beach Building Department website.
We also have the option, like if the engineer doesn't have a digital signature and he's signing and sealing the documents by hand, then whoever is submitting has to get an appointment in our system and bring the documents, and then we will scan the documents and put it in the system. Don't walk over the same thing. The hard copies with the original seal and signature from each page. Well, that's a requirement. When the documents are signed and sealed by hand, that has to be done in each page of the report. Electronic submittals are different because that's a PDF file, and all the information that is contained within that file can be certified by the engineer by just signing and sealing in the front cover, in the first page.
I guess you talked about the unpleasant things. The utility disconnect. An electrical disconnect may be ordered if a building fails to recertify or to seek the proper extension. So if we don't have information on the building safety, if we're not sure at what point the building is in, if we haven't gotten the updated letter from the engineer, we can then post a utility disconnect. We actually were given this extra thing from the from the county. And so we give a posting with no less than 5 business days. So you would have a big red ugly notice on the outside of the building, letting you know. And in a multifamily building, the management company must notify and let all the tenants know, and they need to get back to the building department within 3 business days, letting us know that they have notified all of the owners. So if it comes to that we have the ability to disconnect power. We're hoping that by providing the early notice and the time, this lets buildings get organized and get their engineers together, get their contractors together, so that they can get the building recertified sooner rather than later. The new ordinance allows you to recertify up to 2 years in advance. So because we give you an early notice, if you hire an engineer right away or an architect, and you have the building looked at for both its electrical and structural components, and they're good and the report can be clean, you can then submit that report to the building department. In that case, you're going to have to contact us first to tell us you're ready to submit, and that's when you would email building recertification at miamibeachfl.gov, so that they could then create that for you, or you could create a digital appointment to let us know the information, and we could basically go on the website. Once and the way the 4-year works is we need to link the person that has an active account the case to the recertification case. And so once you let us know, we'll create the case and link you to the account, and then you can upload that information. That then is reviewed by both, structural information is reviewed by Alberto, the electrical information is reviewed by Jamie Reyes. He is thank you for that. We have a lot of Jamies here. Jaime Reyes, who is our electrical chief. So they would review both of those, and if everything is good, your building could receive the recertification up to 2 years early. So there is an allowance for that in the code. There is also an allowance if we find that there's information in the recertification report that is not correct, because somebody calls us up and lets us know about falling concrete or some other unsafe situation in the building, we can also revoke the 40-year recertification. So it's important for buildings to be maintained cleanly, clearly, and to do this work and get on it as soon as possible. And so the next section is for questions. And then after this, we'll go into a presentation on our annual maintenance log. So if somebody has a question, if they raise their hand.
Oh, I'm going to read, there's some in the chat.
Oh, there's some questions in the chat. Perfect. That's even better than doing the other way.
But we have closed.
Okay. Let's do the ones in the chat first.
So the first one is from Sheila Pago. Is Miami Beach planning to apply the new bill to buildings previously covered under the 40-year recertification that are not covered under this new law? For example, a one-story shopping plaza that is 30 years old.
So the ones, yes. When we said all buildings, we meant all of the buildings that normally fell into the 40-year cycle. All of those buildings, including a one-story shopping center, will fall into the 30-year cycle. The only ones that will be on that 25 and 10 cycle are the condominiums and cooperatives that are 3 stories or above. So yes, the rule will stay the same. And if your building is 55 years old, it will be due in 5 years. So any building that's older than 40 and has already gone through one cycle of recertification will be on its normal cycle. And the buildings that are the catch-up year, the ones that are due by December 31st of 2024, they will now fall into those catch-up buildings. Every 10 years will be our heavy year of providing notices. So if you recertify in 2024 because you're part of the catch-up year, you will be recertifying again in 2034 and 2044 and 2054. So those will stay on that cycle. So that if your building is 26 years old, you will not recertify in 2024 and then have to do it a few years later. This was something that's also the county has, we've had trainings with the county, and so that's the cycle we're going to stay on.
Next question from Manuel Martinez. If a building 40-year was requested in 2020, but they still haven't completed it, are they under the new law?
Yes, they're under the new laws as far as extensions. They will not get extensions. We will take them to the Unsafe Structures Board. We can cut off their power. If they're not complying with the update, the 6-month update, that is required by the new law. What they will not suddenly have to do is give us a different report. As I mentioned before, if the report we gave you was the old report, you can submit to the old report. We encourage you to use the new, better report that's more detailed, but if you're using the older report, we will not turn it down.
And they will have to do another recertification in 2030.
And you will have to do a recertification in 2030 because in that case, taking longer does not help you kick the can to a different place. If you are due on a certain year, you are due on that year. And so you need to do it 10 years from when you were due. It's on the birthday of the building, not 10 years from when you did the recertification.
Daniel Perez asks, what about two-story buildings?
Two-story building will fall in the 30-year cycle. Perhaps everyone didn't understand when we said all other buildings will be on the 30-year cycle. So a two-story condominium will need to be have its recertification once it turns 30 years old. Those buildings would have received notice when we posted, I think it was about a month ago we posted, and we posted all of the buildings that were between 30 and 40.
1983 and 1992 are the 30-year cycle
Right.
catch-up.
Those are the 30-year cycle catch-up. So all those buildings, that includes the one-story shopping centers. All those were notified.
I have a couple questions from Nestor, and then we'll go to hands up. Nestor asks, Nestor Cueto, greater than 3 stories means at least 4 stories, correct?
The ones that are on the 25-year cycle are 3 stories and above. So for threshold buildings, it's greater than 3 stories. For the 25-year cycle, it's 3 stories or above. Good catch, Nestor, because that's something that's made me a little bit nuts too. So the threshold buildings are any building that is above 3 stories. So those are 4 stories or above, or anything, including the 4-story. For the condominium and cooperative law, that's the 25-year cycle, it's any building that is 3 stories or above. So that does include the 3-story building.
Do seawalls need to be inspected below the water level?
Seawalls need to be inspected completely. So that would include below the water level. If you notice, usually below the water level, there's a high and a low tide level, and that's where you're going to see the most amount of damage on a seawall, because if it's always below water, things need oxygen in order to deteriorate, and so if it's completely below water, you should not be seeing deterioration in that. So if you see something, I would recommend that if you see at the water table line, the high-low water table line, you see a lot of
Damage.
a lot of damage, a lot of corrosion, a lot of falling concrete. You may want to look below surface. It's really up to the engineer, or architect, the design professional, to clearly make it that determination. But I would recommend going at low tide and looking at it at low tide and seeing what level of corrosion you see when you're at low tide, because that lets you know what's happening on the wall, and you shouldn't really be seeing a whole lot of things below there.
Please clarify again when the old form can be used.
If you received the old form when the building was noticed, you can still use the old form. So if your building was noticed last year when we were still using the old form, you can still use the old form. If your building was noticed this year, so if this year the building was posted with the 90-day notice, we posted it and provided the new form. So starting this year, anyone who gets posted from this year forward needs to use the new form. The only ones, when somebody mentioned that building from 2020, that one can use the old form. We recommend that you do that additional work because, quite frankly, if you are a design professional in this, it may open you up to some sort of, lawsuits or something on that. So I would recommend towards the new form, but we will not require it.
So basically, when the year build ends in 2, basically, there's
Anything year built, right, anything that ends in year built 2 or after will be on the new form. And so we can look at it by anything we posted this year as being due this year. From this year forward is all going to be new form. Anything posted in the past, because when we posted, we gave you the form. That's why I don't feel that it's fair to change the form midstream. But I still encourage you to do more rather than the minimum from that form if you know.
The same would apply for the threshold building requirement.
Right, the same will apply for the requirements. If the building was noticed last year and before, it will fall into those rules. Anything that was noticed this year.
After June.
After June, when all the rules change, no, because the county, yes, after June 1st, when the rules change from the county, anybody who got notice after June 1st of this year will need to make sure that they follow the new rules for the design professional, and that includes the electrical, because especially the electrical portion, where they're doing the additional testing, so that's part of the new form. And so if you were not noticed about that, when you received this is what you need to give us for the 40-year, your building recertification, we're not going to start asking for it now. I'm sorry I keep calling it the 40-year, I'm just old school, it's been a long time. We are changing the name of the permit to the existing building recertification. You will see that, so it will be reflected. Right now, the permit numbers on the 40-year start 40YR and then a number. It will change to EBR and then a number. And that will be for existing building recertification. And that's ready to go very soon. So we're going to get it up on the website very soon, and it will be functioning from then on forward. And then now,
We still have,
we still have a hands up?
that's very quick. More questions that we have 3 hands up. Is the intent of the thermography inspection to open each and every panel cover, disconnect, gutter, etc.? Should this scope be performed by an electrical contractor?
It has to be done by someone who is certified to do thermography.
Yeah.
So the thermography has to be done with someone with a certification. They're actually changing the exact rule, because I think before it said that it had to have 4 years under the license or a certain number of years, and now they're saying, no, you have to have those years of experience, not necessarily under the license. So someone who gets licensed this year, but has been working in thermography and has been working in electrical engineering can use that certification going forward, because they have proof that they've been working within the electrical industry. But yes, the idea is for it to happen and to open it up. And this is on any of the panels. So you don't have to do it at the inside the unit panels, because this is anything that's 400 amps or above. So once you get into, let's say you're doing a condominium, it's going to be the main feed panel, it's going to be any of the major panels that are the distribution points. But once you get into the individual units, you don't need to do thermography inside the units because those panels are not 400 amp panels. So the thermography is a requirement for the panels. Yeah, it has to be from a technician that's licensed in that. Next question.
Well, now here, Tom Puto, you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. During the presentation, it was mentioned several times about a structural engineer doing inspections with no mention of an architect. The Senate bill does not require.
No, it can be an architect. We said, and sorry, it's that both Alberto and I are engineers and we fall into that language, but it can be an architect. It cannot be an architect for a threshold building because in architectural design, you are allowed to do structural work when it is incidental. It's my understanding is to do a structural evaluation of a threshold building is not incidental to your design. So if there is some sort of state ruling differently, we will follow whatever the state says. But my understanding of the rules for the architects are that architects can perform structural work when it is incidental to their design. When this is not incidental to architectural, this is purely structural. It's evaluating a structural system on a building.
Okay,
If you can get a deck statement from the state that says that this is incidental, we will allow it. My understanding is that it's not incidental. That's my understanding, my interpretation. If you can get a deck statement from the state of Florida, I am more than happy to follow it.
okay. Just to clarify here, and I'm just asking the question at this point because I'm an alternate member on the working group that's looking at this Senate bill at the state level, and the discussions there have been.
And we're talking about our local ordinance. So the Miami-Dade County ordinance specifically mentions structural engineers for threshold buildings.
Okay. So what you're talking about here is beyond what is required by the Senate bill. It's your local ordinance.
We have two, right? We've got to follow. So there's the state ordinance, and then there's our local ordinance, the county ordinance, and then we are actually then we have municipal ordinances. So ours can be stricter than the state, can never be less. And when I said that, I really do mean it. Is if there's something in writing from the state that says that the local ordinance can't be the way it is, then the local ordinance will need to be amended, and then we would need to follow whatever that is. Right now, we're following what the county has written out.
Okay, so you're following your local ordinance. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, because we have both. There's the state that passed that something 5. If I had a better memory, I'd remember. And then there's our county ordinance, which is 811F. And that one I know better because I've been using it now for the last few years. But the state passed the ordinance that is
the county ordinance.
Yeah, but the county ordinance amends chapter 811 of county code. The state had the state law that they passed that was something S5, right, or something like that. You know better. You're on that committee.
4D. Special session 4D.
4D. So the state has 4D. We have the county ordinance, which amended 811 of our county code, which then affects every municipality within our county. So we get to kind of do both 4D and 811. So we're trying to show what's happening in Miami Beach with regards to the state and the rule for the condominiums or cooperatives that are 3 stories and above within 3 miles. And if you know Miami Beach, the whole Miami Beach is going to be 3 miles from the shoreline, no matter how they decide to measure it. So we're just assuming every condominium and cooperative here that's 3 stories or above, we're following. We've given them notice. Anyone that's 25 years, between 25 and 40 years, We gave them the notice because we still have, for us, we don't have to go all the way up. We're just doing the condominiums and cooperatives that are between 25 and 40, and then anything that's on that 10-year cycle for us received the notice. Does that answer the question, or did I make it more muddy?
No, I mean, basically, what you have there for local ordinances, both at the county and your city level, is more restrictive than what the state bill is. So therefore, you're allowed to do that, and that answers my question.
Thank you.
Okay, the next hand is Manager Duval. Can unmute yourself, please?
Yes, hi, thank you, Anna and Hussein. I could use a little clarity in something. So our building received a 25-year recertification notice for December 2024. Meanwhile, in 2019, we already engaged in, late 2019, we engaged in a concrete restoration project, which is ongoing and expected to complete by, say, mid of next year. Now that takes care of the exterior of the building. Now, when it comes for recertification, I understand from Hussein's slides that only the electrical has to be done. However, other than the exterior, there are internal structural components of the building that also need to be inspected and reported?
Yes. So when they look at the building, they look at all of the building structure. You're not only looking at the externals. When we talk about the externals a lot more, because a lot of times that's where you see most of the wear and tear, but the engineer is supposed to do an evaluation of the entire structure. And what we've pretty much noticed from past years is generally on a lot of the condominiums here, a lot of the buildings where you have the parking garage at the lower level, you have all of your structure fully exposed. You can look and see if there's been differential settlement in the foundation. You can look and see if there's excessive cracking in the concrete. That is all very visually exposed. And so if you find evidence of visually exposed problems, you may want to do, and this is where the state talked about 2 levels of inspection. There's a level 1 inspection that is a purely visual inspection, and there is a level 2 inspection, which involves a little bit beyond the level 1 inspection. And so since in the interior of the building, you generally have drywall that covers a lot of areas, it may be, if your condominium has a large common area and there's a drop ceiling in there, then someone can actually peek in and get a look at some of the structure from above. And you don't need to start opening holes and things. It may be that if you found enough damage in the structure below that's been more severe, that you do want to kind of make a few peek holes somewhere and see what you're looking at as far as those columns are concerned. And it may be that someone feels like additional testing is required. But it sounds like if your building started preparing in 2019, I think you're doing a great job because it's good to look. The more you maintain a building, the better off it is. I think of it as having like healthy habits in life. Exercising and eating healthy, it gives you a longer life. So in the case of your building, the exercise is paint, waterproofing, and maintenance. And so painting the building, putting proper waterproofing on things, maintaining the building by doing work when you notice it and not just letting it go till it gets to a point where things start falling off. Those are all positive ways to get your building to have a better cycle on the needs for the major repairs.
Absolutely,
Okay, let me add something.
understood that.
Alberto wants to add something.
Let me add something. You are doing repairs under a permit, but the recertification programs are independent. In other words, you are still going to hire a structural engineer. This is a threshold building. I don't know. How tall is this building?
This is 1998, and this is 650 West Avenue. We on the Bay.
So
The
you
Floridian.
need to hire a structural engineer to do the recertification report. What,
Right.
if you already did the repairs, he may not find any problems. He should not find any problems. But
Right,
it's
but
up to
the
that
thing is-
engineer recerti-
Right, the thing
it's
is, I
up to that
understand.
engineer recertifying the building.
I understand. So the engineer is, he's engaged with this project, and my discussion about thing was that it's along the line what Anna was just explaining, that towards the end, when we are closing this permit, say in November, by say August of next year, by then we would have also extended the inspections. For example, the garage, the stairwells, the corridors, some basic interior structural element inspection. Other than that, there'll be electrical inspection as well to go with it. So with one permit that's open for the exterior renovation project, which is stucco repairs, concrete, miscellaneous, whatever that is, how do we fuse this thing into one recertification when it comes along?
You don't use it. So you have a permit and we have a recertification. They're two separate processes. What will happen will be you will receive the notice of the recertification being due. When the project is completed, yes, but you receive the notice this year, so you're due in 2024. So when your project is completed, you can, or as you go completing it, you can start doing the inspection so that whenever you are done with the permit process, the concrete restoration process, you can then get your clean bill of health for the building structure, clean bill of health for the building's electrical, and then be ready to submit the report for the building recertification. But it's not like that report comes in under the concrete restoration
Gotcha.
permit.
No, the recertification includes roofing, windows, many components that have nothing to do with the concrete restoration.
Yeah, so you will look at the whole envelope, the exterior of the building, and then in addition, inside, in what you mentioned, the stairwells, the corridors, those areas, look at the structure in those areas, and also look in some of the units to see if the units show that there's been a lot of water intrusion. Sometimes that's like a red flag for things. So there's, different things to look for. And so long as you take care of it, it sounds like you're in a good place.
Right.
It really does. Make sure that you stay in a good place and that things move forward so that when you can actually maybe get your building recertified before December 31st, 2024.
Perfect. On your slide 12, there was something Morsen mentioned about foundation inspection.
Yes.
Now, I don't know, I guess the engineer would know how to do that thing, but do you have any idea? Is it intrusive or is it geotechnical, study? What kind of foundational?
The level one on that doesn't need to be very intrusive. They're looking to see if they notice any differential settlement, if they see any cracking. So wherever you have columns that have heavier loads, and the structural engineer will know that, you look at those areas to see if you see excessive cracking around the columns at the slab level. That lets you know that something is moving and something else is not moving. And those are the types of things that the engineer will look for. So you
Right,
want
you
to,
said-
make sure. Mhm.
Yeah, you said the key word, slab level. That's what I was looking. I was thinking foundation is it underground, above ground? Is the foundation columns of the building and whatnot?
Well, the foundation is underground, but you're looking at the foundation system right now at the surface. So the level one inspection does not bring in ground penetrometers and does not bring in things to look for settlement. But you do look, when you look around the edge of a building that's newly built, you can see where sometimes you look at the ground and then you look at the building and you notice that there's like a difference. So something's moved a little bit. So sometimes you can see that. There's a thing called step cracking that happens in block walls, and that lets you know that something is moving on the corner.
Mhm. All right, that helps. And
The engineer will know what to look for.
right, that's good.
PR or architect. I mean,
right.
depending on the size of the building.
Okay, just one last one last question quickly. I know there are others waiting. Now, at the time, let's say when we get our 25-year recertification, there is another deadline of what's the reserve structural integrity report. It's kind of confusing now because if you have your
That's a
recertification,
separate thing. That deadline, that structural integrity report deadline is not with the building department. That is something maybe for your insurance or for something else. But if you have the building recertification, I would think you would be able to easily be able to provide a structural integrity report for that. But I'm not sure what that's about. And I know there's a whole thing about the reserve, but again, that's like way outside of the scope of anything any of us here do.
all right, so once it's 25, we accomplish that, then there's a 10-year mile marker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's 2024, 2034, 2044, 2054.
Understood. That was very helpful.
Thank
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank
Okay, next person with their hand up is Y.I.
And this will have to be our last question because we have commission going on today and
Y.I.
Y.I.
There are some questions in the chat.
Okay, then just let's do the chat question next.
Yvonne asked, when would recertification notice be sent to a condominium built in 1996, currently 26 years old?
So you already received it. We posted all those buildings in August, and we put a posting on every single building.
If it is 3 or taller,
If it's 3 or taller, if it's 2 stories or less, you will not be due until your building is about to turn 30, which is going to be in 26.
Here's one that might be helpful. Does the new recertification program require inspection of a specific number or percentage of condo units? Is it all of them?
So it really is up to the engineer to determine how many units they want to look into. They may look from the exterior of the building and see if they see certain things on the exterior. They may look to see if there's been any permits to do drywall replacement or anything that's happened because of water intrusion. And because of that, they may decide to look at certain units over others. But I would think that if the building, just to kind of give you things, that if the building is on Collins, you would want to look at, and on the ocean side, you would want to look at as many units on the east face of the building as possible. You may look at more units on the east face and less on the other side. If the building is facing towards Miami, you would definitely want to look on the west side because those are the areas where there's much more battering and much more wind and rain loads. But that's just my thought on it. But usually, my background was construction testing, and you generally do things and you do about 10%, and then you expand from the 10% based on what you find. I would assume that's how the engineers would do it, but there may be an engineer who feels comfortable looking at everything on a certain level or so many units, and that's really personal. It doesn't say in any of the ordinances how many units have to be looked at. But, so that's really a personal decision.
Why I unmuted themselves if they want to ask their question.
Okay, YI, if you want to ask your question. Okay, we can't hear you. If anyone would like, they can email us and we will email the copy of this thing. We didn't even get into the annual log. And just so you know, there's an annual maintenance log. This is a local ordinance that we have. And this one is,
And it's posted, we have
it's posted.
a recording of the last.
Right, we have a posting of this recording on the last time, but if you want to just read through this, we'll send it with you, and the maintenance log is something that will start in January of 2023, and in January of 2023, if you don't participate, you can be penalized if the building is 5 stories or above. Any building that's below 5 stories that participates in the annual log gets a chance of a discount on their recertification. So participating in this program can assist your building and lower its fees for recertification. And if you do not participate and your building is above 5 stories, there are fines and fees associated with not participating. So I thank you all for coming. I thank Adalberto, Mosen, and Natasha for really preparing all of this. And thank you all for attending, and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Right.